Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Today's topic, we are going to be talking about cannabis operators. Stop guessing and start using your data. And before I dive in, I just want to share a little bit about my background. I got my start working in the Colorado cannabis industry, running and operating vertically integrated cannabis operations from 2009 to 2014. And in 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, and I help operators navigate the regulatory landscape across the United States market. So let's everyone give a warm welcome to our next guest, Tyler Works. And Tyler is the Chief Growth Officer of Canna Spyglass. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks, Jenny. So I've been officially in the industry since 2018, having worked in payroll software when I first entered the space. And before that, I was an activist back in Massachusetts from 2014 to 2016, helping facilitate and run different political rallies around cannabis legalization and everything like that. Took a break to do nonprofit work and then joined the industry here when I moved out here to Colorado. And since I first joined the industry, I've done a bunch of different things and worked for an MSO with Tilt Holdings doing distribution and their SMS software, and then have been doing data in the space since 2020 when I first started with Cannabis Media and then moved over here to Canna Spyglass last year as their chief growth officer. And some other things that I've been doing in the space as well is I do run the Colorado chapter of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, where we're putting on events every month and continuously just building a community and helping operators and cannabis centric businesses together. So a little bit about me.
Well, wonderful. I'm happy to have you. And no, I'm excited. We're going to dive in. And I first wanted to tackle, do cannabis operators actually know how to use their data? And this is such a great topic because I do run into this a lot of times where I'm in facilities and I'm asking people, hey, what's your data saying? Are you checking your data? And it's a mixed bag. Some people are really good about tracking their data, but I think other people they might be standoffish. There's probably 10 to 20 reasons why people don't do it. So why do you think so many cannabis businesses collect enormous amounts of data, but then they actually don't use it effectively?
I think the main thing is right that people in the modernization and in modern times understand how important data actually is to running a
Yeah.
business. And they understand that it's an important aspect to their business. The problem is that a lot of people, I don't think, have data literacy. They don't actually have the skills or the know-how or the knowledge to actually interpret what their data is
Yeah.
saying. And they're just stuck trying to interpret something that it's like, I know a little bit of Spanish, but I'm not going to read a novel in Spanish. You know what I mean? And that's how I think of a lot of people working with
Yeah.
data is that they understand that it's numbers, they understand when things are good, they understand the basics of it, but when they're trying to make big level decisions or they're trying to understand what's going wrong, if you're not understanding and comprehensively understanding what that data is saying, you're just going to be lost in the dark.
That's really true. That's a really good point. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see operators making with the data that they already have? I know we talked about how some people, they just don't know. Nobody's trained them. They didn't have like a CTO on staff, a chief technology officer to help them manage all their tech stack and data points. And how does somebody get over that road bump in their business where they don't know how to do these things?
Yeah, I think the big mistakes that happen are that people think about it really small. They're thinking about
Yeah.
data in the immediate versus using data to actually start creating strategy around it, right? And what will end up happening a lot of times is that people are going to look and see this data and they're going to be looking for problems instead of being really proactive versus reactive with their data. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see operators make, is that they will see that maybe they're not selling through product fast enough for how much they're growing. Then instead of really approaching it from a aspect of, okay, what does this mean for our strategy? Do we decrease our grow or do we increase sales, right? And how do we go about this? What ends up happening is that they could easily hit an equilibrium of how much product they're growing to how much sales they currently have and adjust that for each growth cycle, right? And versus just being reactive to that data point. And I think that's a big mistake I just see a lot of people make. It's not always more SKUs means more sales, right? I think that's something you and I have talked about plenty of times, is where it's like you can have thousands of SKUs in your store, but if you're not selling through all those SKUs, what's the point? You're just having wasted inventory space. And I think there's so many companies now that offer all of that data to these different companies, talking about inventory, talking about the sell through rates, talking about the monetary return and the ROI that people should be expecting. And then people aren't seeing that happen because they're just not getting, one, like we said, the knowledge to actually interpret that data. And then two, they're not hiring the right people to actually then do that and focus on those things. So those are some of the things I see in mistakes that people are making. And again, people hire data analysts to do these things. I know quite a few companies here in Colorado that they have data analyst teams, and a lot of these bigger companies do. And usually the mistakes are happening not with the big companies, it's happening with the small people who don't have the resources and the capabilities to actually hire the people to interpret the data. In my opinion, if you're a company or you're an operator and you're just operating your own business and you don't actually have the funds to actually hire a new person to do that data interpretation, then probably you shouldn't be buying the data source. You should be working on streamlining operations, trying to build a profit. And it's a catch-22 because the easiest way to do that is through interpreting data. But again, if you don't know how to do that, then it's really hard to actually, you're just spending exorbitant amount of data in this, especially in cannabis where it's really expensive. Data is really expensive in this space.
For what they charge for the different softwares. I've had cannabis software in general. It always starts at $300 to $500 a month, and it just compiles. And
if
not only
not
that,
more.
some of these POS systems $600-700 a month, and how do they just keep adding on to that tech stack like that? And then they have their seed to sale, and their metric tags, and just and all of a sudden they're doing $2,000 to $5,000 a month. Some of these places for software.
And that's the big thing, especially with the data companies. I'm seeing data companies charging minimum $800 a month for a single state and a single category, right? I've heard quotes to me about California business for California data, 40 grand a year just for California for pre-rolls or flower. And it can be exorbitant amounts of costs. And if that data is not working for you, then you've just spent 40 grand on something that's not moving the needle.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even like myself as a consultant, the compliance software, it was so hard to do because some places wanted to charge you $5,000 a month or $3,000 a month. And that's really hard to do if you're a small business. And I know the operators feel it too, the small business operators.
Yeah. And it's sometimes, especially on the ancillary side, a lot of these businesses also forget the majority of this industry are small businesses and can't actually afford these big data sets that maybe they're not all going to use, maybe they are going to use. But I do know one of the big things that I think of a lot is how do we as data companies, how do we help these companies also grow? and do those things. It's a thing that you think about a lot. It is hard
Oh, you're
to,
fine.
just because, especially with data, a lot of data companies will build moats around that data as well, so that you are forced to use their data and use that as a source of truth. And that's the other thing is,
Interesting.
in interpreting data, you can't take data for what it actually looks like. And I think that's another big mistake that these companies make, is that they'll look at a piece of data and they will view it as the source of truth. When in reality, if you really want to get the most accurate data, you're using probably 3 to 4 different sources for the same thing. And in this industry, that's not very affordable, again, but you can't just use hoodie. You can't just use headset. You can't just use BDSA to just go through and see all this data, because the thing is that even if they're doing it straight through the point of sale, it does require the operator to still be managing their inventory correctly. And if they're not, then that data's off, right? And the same thing can be said if I'm using headset and I know that Trulieve is using headset and they're connected to their point of sale, then you have to imagine that all of that data is skewed towards what Trulieve is doing, but not what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, it's true. Where's the tracking and stuff coming from? And it's interesting when I say mom and pops, I really just mean like a micro business or a really small business. And you can have the traditional old school business style in the cannabis industry. And I know people that are still like, they don't even look at their KPIs, or if they're tracking numbers, it's all via spreadsheets. That's how I was taught when I was running dispensaries. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
math, a lot of spreadsheets. That's how we did it. We didn't even really have dashboards when I was starting in the cannabis industry. Now it's just, wow, it's just so easy. It's just right there. I know people that ignore it and they just look at crushing it. I'm selling all these SKUs. I have 600 SKUs in my store and it's flying off the shelf. And that's all that matters. And they're not looking at anything else. I want to move into how AI is changing what operators can do with their data. This is not an area I can speak about, so I'm glad that you could talk
Yeah.
about AI. This is not my wheelhouse at all, but how can an operator use AI to make the data they already have more actionable?
Yeah. And it's something that I've been working on with Canna Spyglass for a while. Really, what AI allows you to do and what AI is really good at is interpreting data. That's what it is best at. In my opinion, AI is not great at creating content. It's not great at creating marketing materials or sales pitches or that human to human interaction. But what it is really good at taking and cross-referencing lots of data points all at once and coming up with conclusions that you as an operator or an owner operator can actually use to make decisions about your business, right? There are so many things that I've been able to do now that when I attach my different data sources into my AI, like I have Claude and ChatGPT and whatever else I want to use, and I can actually hook up different data sources into those and actually pull real data from big databases, right? And have it really interpret for me some of the gaps, like white space, where my brand is going to maybe best perform based on where my brand is already performing. Where am I going to go next? How is my brand performing now? What can I do to maximize my efficiency as a company? If I'm a retailer, where should I be building my next retail front? Where am I going to be the most competitive? I have conversations all the time with people who are investing or working with retail shops and consulting with them and being like, the question is, where should I do my next shop? You can either shoot from the hip or you can shoot with a scope, right? And that's really where it comes down to is with AI, you're able
Precise,
to
being precise,
you're yeah,
basically.
exactly. You're able to be a lot more precise with how you are interacting with the data that is provided to you. Now, AI is not great at a couple of things, such as building large data sets for you. There are still limitations onto what it is, but it does allow you to go and cross-reference a bunch of things and all at once, and what would take a week or a month for people can take a couple of hours to a day, right? For example, I built like a random scenario just to do it for myself of being like, oh, show me, I want to build a mid-level vape brand in New York. Show me actually how to do that. Built out a whole game plan, showed me who the competitors were, what
Uh-huh.
stores are going to be my best first case scenarios and my first 10 stores to actually go and target, gave me profiles on all those stores, gave me all these, actionable items, and gave me kind of a year runway of what that should be looking like and what I should be expecting at the end. And that's just one piece, but we're in a new era of where we can use AI to, especially for these mom and pop shops, to go and use that to interpret data that maybe they weren't able to interpret before, right? Those
Sure.
common mistakes. It acts as a data analyst for you. You just need to understand how AI works and how you're going to best be able to utilize it in order to get it to work for you instead of against you.
Might be a little bit of a side jump regarding AI, but isn't AI kind of changing the game a little bit with these point of sale systems? Because I've been reading that they're helping with some of the deficiencies regarding people making mistakes in their metric, for example, and it's catching data entry mistakes, which I think is going to help save time and save money. And it's going to help with the auditing process and catch things versus an employee spending all day auditing the system and trying to find mistakes or figure out different things that are issues that are going on in the system.
Yeah, you do see it with something like with FlowHub's
Yeah, they
MCP that
announced
they
they
just
were,
released,
yeah.
which at the end of the day, when an MCP is just a bridge from a data set into your LLM, or which in this
What's
case would
it
be like
stand for?
a large language model is the LLM, and an MCP is multi-context protocol. So
Oh, I did not know
real,
that. They're
it's
out
just
of
a
my
technical,
range.
it's a technical term. The
Yeah.
best thing to compare it to would be like an API, but an API is
Okay.
can go both ways, where an MCP is really just pulling data from a data source into your large language model. And ultimately, I think with those point of sale systems, what you're going to see is less errors. You have to make sure that they are trained and ready to go in those scenarios. There's obviously some of those examples that you'll find on the internet of companies that mislabeled or somehow it miscalculated what the actual final sale number should be, things like
Yeah.
that. So it is up to the companies to not let the AI go rogue, which it will do, right? That's the
This is
big
going to be
thing.
our challenge in the future
The
that
the
people
big
just let the computers take over and they don't
well,
check things.
and that's the big thing with AI right now, and even outside of the cannabis industry, is that you are starting to see people creating all of these different tools on their own that are pulling from AI, but they're not programmers. So again, they're just vibe coding and doing these things. You can ask your AI the same prompt multiple times, and it will give you different answers each time. So what will end up happening is that, and most people don't actually understand this, they'll ask it once and then they will take that as a truth, even though that's not actually how AI works. I saw a great video that explains AI where it goes, I want you to cut my sub in half. And it goes lengthwise. And it's like, no, that's not actually how I want to do it. I want to cut in half the other way. And so it flips the sandwich over and goes, tries to cut it lengthwise again. And that's a great example of how AI actually works, that it needs context more so than anything else. And that's a piece that people just don't understand, is that they'll build these systems and without any context, You can pull from your data sources to build out invoicing automatically, but that's a huge risk. And that if you don't have a context layer in there to give the AI the actual ability to pull on context and understand what it's actually pulling on, you might be billing someone for 1,000 samples
Yeah.
instead of 1,000 actual SKUs. You know what I mean? And it only takes one number out of place. It only takes one thing going wrong for it to totally get the end result wrong. It's really powerful, but it requires a lot of upfront work in order for it to work well.
Yeah,
So,
I was on my friend's website and I said, "Hey, one of your images has three hands." And we were laughing about it. I was like, "There's just a random hand coming out of nowhere." It's a lot. It has random hands or too many fingers, or it's just really weird.
but you'll even see it with like new companies that are popping up. I found a company the other day. It was a new competitor, and I was trying to click around on their website, and their website didn't work. Their page was built, their front page was built, but then you try and click around and you try and click
Oh, was
on
it all
different links.
HTML code or something that they were
All
building?
HTML code, which didn't link to anything. It was just a website. It was
They're
just a
probably trying to
page.
self-build. They're just speaking into a phone and building it.
Exactly. And the problem is that you need to build 1,000 pages. It's a lot of work. And people think because you have AI is that you can just get away with that. And again, AI slims the work down. It makes the work a little easier. It makes the actual building of the website and the things that you're doing on that web page easier to build. When I'm creating an image, for example, right, or I'm creating marketing material, sometimes I'll use AI for the background image of what I'm doing because I'm like, I don't want to design this myself. I want to describe what I'm thinking and I want you to build it. But I'm going to go and I'm going to place my logo in there and I'll place other logos in there and I'll do the things that I need to do. But I just need to save some time because I don't have the time to go through and actually build this image in the background. And the same thing can be said about kind of everything, right? Is that if I'm building my resume in an AI, for example, right? I'm just using AI to
I've
help
never
me
even thought of
format it.
that.
Some people are having it write their whole resume for them. But really, all you should be
Wow.
doing is you should be using it to format the resume because
Good at structuring and flow. I'm a technical writer. I like writing. It's just so hard for me to just give up everything over to AI. It's just not in my
you
nature.
shouldn't. And that's the thing is that again, writing, like AI sounds like AI. Everyone knows, everyone's starting to get those little twinges of AI. It's easy to tell. People aren't
I can
good.
tell 100% every time.
Absolutely. I have a friend who used M dashes before AI, and now they feel like they can't
Uh,
use it anymore because even though it was part of their writing style, because automatically people assume that's AI writing. They're a lawyer. It's just part of another piece of technical writing, right?
mm,
And the other thing is that if I'm ever using it to polish up things that I've written, because I do need help polishing sometimes, and I try to use it to check tone. So I'm a direct person. If I am coming off too directly, some people misinterpret that, right? And so I want to be like, just make sure the tone of this is friendly. Make sure the tone of this isn't me just being annoyed in this moment. And it will re engage with me. And sometimes it will add stuff in there that I don't want. And I'm like, nope, this sounds like you wrote it and not me. And even if I put all of what I've been writing into it, and at the end of the day, that's part of it. But I think with analysis, like I said, I think it's really good. I'll give you another good example, especially from retailers. I was doing a demo and they were looking at entering the space. And I was like, okay, if you want to open a retail facility somewhere, here are all of your options. And here's why they're your options and how far away you are from other dispensaries. What's your target demographic? Who is your ideal customer that you're trying to sell to? and then bring into the store. Let's talk about what that kind of retail location actually looks like, right? And
which is funny because that's my next question. Like, how can operators use data to find their actual market? And so, no, I'm glad you're talking about
yeah,
this.
and that's the crazy part. Again, it's a thing that you have probably seen so much. I've talked to people where they're just like, this retailer just wants to buy another place and they really don't care what it is. And it's probably a loss on them at that point. And it happens a lot.
Yeah.
Retailers just want to expand and they're thinking that more stores equals better. But the reality is, and we've talked about this, more does not always mean better. More doesn't always mean that you're going to make more money. If you're trying to sell connoisseur level product here in Colorado, maybe you should be going and looking for places where the demographics match that, right? Who's buying connoisseur level products? Where can we build a retail shop that is actually going to match that? Same thing will happen with brands, right? Where a brand might, if they're selling high level concentrates, why are you looking at every store? Every store is not your ideal customer. Every store is not selling high levels of concentrate. If I'm selling concentrates here in Colorado, a Live Well is not going to be my ideal spot. Neither is a Native Roots. I'm not thinking about either of those spots because those places are for generally going to be for tourists, or they're going to be lower levels of flower. They're discount shelf stuff. Okay, let me go and find who's selling the most live rosin in the state right now. Let me get on the shelf with these other brands that they're obviously going to be carrying. If I'm a new live rosin brand, okay, where's Green Dot selling the most right now? Let me go and start trying to sell next to them and be a lower level option for those same customer base, right? And that's how you build using AI and using that data to really pull. And I could ask Claude right now, being like, okay, show me where Green Dot is selling the most. Claude will pull me back using real data to then tell you, okay, here are the shops that we're seeing the most use out of. Then I can even do more things of being like, okay, based on this, show me the demographics of that neighborhood. And it will go. And one of the cool things that I've had Claude do is go and pull public record data, census data, and be like, here's the average income of this neighborhood that is selling the most of your product or the product you're trying to sell. Here are some other dispensaries in similar areas that match that criteria and that demographic. Really easy way to pinpoint and figure out and hone in on your ideal customer, right? Instead of just
What's it pulling
guessing.
the data from? Is AI reading all the POS menus?
So one of the companies that we work with, they are canned menus. They are pulling from those e-com stuff live. So you're actually able to see how things are selling through. And usually, at least with the e-com, it's connected with your inventory generally, especially if you're on 𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀cie or Jane or some of those other ones that are pulling live inventory and attached to your e-com. But then there's others, like I know Headset just came out with an MCP as well to connect with Claude, where I know Headset also, they're pulling from some point of sale data while also pulling from some e-com data. You can pull live data with these different tools. And that's where I think the real power comes from it. And I've been seeing it firsthand because I'm working with a company that's on the forefront of this, where we're able to see, okay, show me top prospects, show me these top brands, show me these top retailers, and show me who the purchasing manager is at these shops. And it just ends up being this new wave of how teams can actually use the tools that are in this industry to get more from less, right? Like you don't need the same level of sales team anymore. You don't need the same level of support for those sales teams. Claude can really help you with that. And as long as you are taking the time to manage it, and there's these things with Claude and with ChatGPT and all of them that they're called skills, where you can essentially build into it ways for it to contextualize the data the same way every single time. And you can basically help yourself to make sure that even if you're asking the same prompt, you're getting the same answer and doing all of those things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that we talked about where manufacturers or cultivation facilities, they think they have to try to get into every store. Instead of an operator saying, how do I get into more stores? How should they actually be thinking about finding the right stores? Because look at Colorado, you can break Colorado up. Like we have the Eastern Plains, we have the Front Range, which basically is everything from the mountains and over, like the Denver metropolitan area. Then we start getting under the high country, the mountains and different parts of the states, and then you have the southern part of the state. Not all brands do well in certain parts of the state.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the interesting part, right? Is that one, you can use AI and data to figure out what brands are doing well where. And it shouldn't be so much of how do I get into more stores? The question people should be asking themselves is how do I get into the right store? How am I finding these stores? And using that information, and if they're already in some stores, using the data they're getting from that. If I want to be in more, if I'm selling better, say I have a store that I'm selling to in Breckenridge, but I also have a store I'm selling to in Denver and Aurora and Boulder and we'll say Fort Collins, right? Okay. Of those, where am I performing well? Where am I performing poorly? Where should I be thinking about my next move? And you should be focusing on the places that you're doing well. And you can expand later on other demographics, but like, why do that? I was talking to a friend the other day where she was telling me that she's working with someone right now who sells low THC edibles. Great product, low customer base, because people who buy low dosed anything are not generally the people who are going to be showing up in your average dispensary. Now,
No, they're purchasing hemp products.
Exactly.
They're buying hemp derived products.
And if I'm trying to sell something like that in Colorado, you know where I'm starting? I'm starting in Aspen. I'm starting in Breckenridge. I'm starting in the mountains because that's where, if any
Smart.
place you're going to be selling it, is going to be in those mountain towns where there's money and there's more chance of someone coming in and buying it incidentally versus a high THC product where I'm like, if I'm living in Denver and someone's living in Denver and they're not just visiting, they're going to want higher THC products. It's just the way that is, right? And I'm not saying that it's impossible to sell those products normally, but dispensaries aren't going to want to buy that. It's a low ticket item and it just doesn't really move the needle for any of these dispensaries.
So true, this high THC piece. I don't want to leave out grows and manufacturers because it is very dispensary heavy, the conversation. So how does data driven decision making apply differently to cultivators and manufacturers? Like what can they
Yeah.
do? I feel like they don't really get talked about enough.
I think with both of them, well, grows are a little different because there is so much data that goes along with the actual grow cycle. So I think grows are generally really good about those data points and they do a pretty good job of keeping up with those. What I generally think about with them in particular is okay, how does production look versus sales for those products? And that's where I think about it. If you're selling flour, okay, how much flour are you selling a month? How much are you growing a month? Those should be pretty close together. You should not be producing more flour than you are selling. It's just flour has a shelf life. If you're doing it well and you're doing it in this modern time, we see it here in Colorado. Like, not everyone's meant to grow exponentially. You can just run a business and have a successful business. The other ones are like with brands, just the brands in general. So manufacturers, things like that, you can use AI and data to basically figure out how to best run the operation, how to best equalize the amount of money that you are putting in and getting out of it. And AI can really help in doing that, right? Most manufacturers and growers in Colorado can't really afford some of those data analysts. I only know of a few in the state that
Yes.
actually have a data analyst on staff or a team of data analysts, right? And those are the most successful brands in the state. And there's a reason for that. And it's because a brand can, again, use that, whether it's through a grower, through a manufacturer, or so on. You can actually see where the white space is and where you're selling. Like, again, using demographic data, being like, hey, where are people actually buying my product? Who's actually buying my product? Let me try and pinpoint that in different areas and try selling to places maybe I haven't ever even thought of selling before. Um, and AI can just help you do that without having to hire a person to do that. And that's really the big power piece of it. I have friends who are data analysts. It is a piece where I worry about them long term because it is one of the things that these AI tools are incredibly good at. It is a thing they are incredibly good at, is actually analyzing data and coming up with comprehensive, actionable items with it. And instead of it just being data, it's becoming actionable data. Instead of, and it's never perfect because data's never perfect, but it allows you to, again, interpret it. You can ask your Claude or your ChatGPT to explain a complex data set to you as a fifth grader, and it will do it as simply as possible. And it'll allow you to interpret it in a way that maybe you didn't know how to do before. And that's really the power, right? It's going back to, where do companies make mistakes with their data? They just don't have the people to actually analyze and interpret it correctly. That's where AI comes in, is it really comes in and it becomes this new piece of being able to interpret and see AI in a brand new light, and allows you as an operator to get the most out of data that you're paying for and really get the most out of what you're good at, and allows you to do things that maybe you're not so good at.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think the cannabis industry is moving away from grow as fast as possible mentality, and are operators becoming more strategic about building sustainable businesses?
I think with us being in Colorado, we actually get to see
Yeah,
this
we
kind of
do.
play out in real time, right? Where I think as we move into being the most mature market in the world, right, we are starting to see this big difference. We've seen, I think we're on like a third or fourth wave of cannabis entrepreneurs in the state, right? But I think we are moving away as totally as an industry from growing as quickly as possible. You have companies that are trying to do that, and they've got strategies to do that already. It's not to say that there's not someone who hasn't even shown up yet that will be the biggest company that's ever existed in cannabis, right? But it is to say that we are seeing a lot more consolidation of the industry right now than we are seeing growth of it, and more people popping up and things. It's still happening. People are still showing up in the industry. It's just at a slower rate, right? At least in markets like Colorado. Maybe if we're in New York, it's a different story. People are trying to grow as quickly
It's
as possible.
emerging. Yeah. I think too, people are still coming into Colorado. There's still new operators launching and buying existing operations, or they're applying for a license, and they're coming in with a different mentality. They're not, I think we've had this conversation that they're coming in and they are using the data information, and they are coming in a more modernized way, and they're not trying to go super big out of the gate, because Colorado is not the 2019 market where it was build it as fast as you could, sell as much as you could, and grow tons of plants and own 20 grows. And we're even seeing with Vireo how when they came in, they bought up a bunch of companies here in Colorado. These grows are shutting down. But honestly, do you really need that many grows in today's market, in a mature, saturated market? You do not need to own 5 to 10 grows anymore. You just don't. It doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
well, that's the thing that we see is that I think of that giant outdoor grow that's down in
Oh,
down
Los Sueños, remember that?
the Los
Are you talking about
Sueños.
Los
Yep.
Sueños?
And
I don't even know if
yep.
it's called that anymore. It got
No,
bought up by Schwaz.
yeah, which means that it probably got bought out. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Sueños was a crazy in Pueblo.
And you think about that, right? Where it's like, and I don't know whether it's by design. I think probably it is that these earlier industries oversaturated, especially on the grow side, in order to have a healthy retail side kind of thing. In Minnesota, right? Companies aren't even able to sell flower in their dispensaries because there were no grows able to
They
actually
have a
sell.
supply chain. Yeah.
It was the opposite issue that we faced here in Colorado for such a long time. And what I think is what I see here in Colorado is that it feels like you see a little bit of the future of just the industry in general, right? Is that in 2019 to 2022, we were seeing tech levels of investorship into cannabis companies, which doesn't make sense because cannabis doesn't have, it has an upper echelon. You can only sell so much weed. It's a commodity at the end of the day, right? But people are looking at it like a tech startup and being like, oh, I'll invest all my money into this because I think sky's the limit. Everyone's smoking weed. Weed's growing. And it's just, again, it's a commodity. It comes in waves. It does things in waves. People can only smoke so much weed. You can only grow so much weed. And that's really...
It's outpacing smoking cigarettes now. I'm not sure if you saw that stat the
I
last
didn't see
couple
that.
weeks.
Yeah.
More people smoke cannabis than cigarettes
Well, that's a
in the
great
United
stat to
States.
have. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that either. I think that's the thing is we also don't just have a few brands in cannabis. There's only a few brands that actually sell cigarettes or sell them successfully is what I would say.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of SKUs and there's a lot of companies in cannabis. It's going to consolidate more, right?
Like
Not
alcohol and tobacco.
even other things. Cereal. How many things are owned by Procter and Gamble? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is one of those things where we're going to see more consolidation over time.
So we're going to see a lot of acquisitions for sure.
I'd be interested to see if there's going to be like big scale acquisitions if Schedule 3 really goes through, right? Or descheduling happens altogether.
I think we're going to even see more consolidation in the future, that they're going to start buying up these craft brands. Look at Green Dot. They have a huge following. People love the Green Dot brand and they don't care what they have to pay. They have customers that are committed to buying their brand. And so
Well,
I could see someone like Green Dot eventually, someone wanting to buy them out.
and you see it with stuff like Wana, right? Wana has that LOI with Canopy. And so technically they're under Canopy now. And same thing with Wild buying Grown or whatever it's called, or maybe that was Wana too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but then there's also Good Tide or whatever it is that is also a wild brand.
Good Tide.
Yeah, Good Tide is also a wild brand, right? So you're going to continue seeing those things happen. It's just an inevitability. I don't think it's scary. It's just part of how CPG works, right? At the end of the day. And I think there's so many things that these brands can do. And these big brands, they're trying to be everywhere. So if someone goes from Colorado over to Massachusetts, Wild wants you to be able to find Wild in both of those areas. And good move. But I also think that as we modernize too, we're also seeing this new wave of entrepreneurs coming in who are realizing that they don't need to be huge. I think that's the big thing is it's okay to build a sustainably small business. It's okay to have a sustainable business in a single market without trying to expand and be everywhere all the time. If I'm Green Dot, I know I'm making a good amount of money here in Colorado Do I need to expand to other markets? I don't think that's necessary if that's not the vision, right? If you're not looking to go and expand everywhere and stretch yourself thin, and you want to keep up with your product quality and keep up just operations here, that's great. There's room for everyone. But if you're trying to be the next Wild, if you're trying to be the next Trulieve, if you're trying to be the next GTI, Rise, like any of these smaller brands are trying to compete and be a big brand, you're going to have to compete as a big brand then. But if you want to be a small brand, and if you want to focus on your brand and you want to focus on a singular market and figure out who your ideal customers are in that market, great. You can do that. We are hitting a point where there is sustainability in it as long as you're not wearing yourself thin. I know a couple of growers here in Colorado that they are growing as much as they are selling, and they are running out of product every month.
Yeah.
And
I know ones that run out every week right
yeah,
now. And they're
and
craft size.
yeah, and we might be thinking of the same people, but they took over about a year and a half ago with probably 5 years worth of debt tied to the business, and they paid it all off in a year. And
Wow.
it's wild, right? Because they put the money that they needed to put back into the business, but they didn't try and overextend themselves by trying to either sell more, grow more. They were like, let's build the best quality product, sell it, and allow people to purchase. And we'll just have the same people buy every month, and they'll sell out, and then we'll sell out.
It creates more urgency for people to want to buy more. It's so
Exactly.
crazy when people reach out and they want your product and you're like, well, you have to act fast because we can sell out in 2, 3 days. It creates urgency.
I think that's something Green Dot did for quite a while. And I
They
don't know if they
still
do.
sell out. They
I,
still sell out of stuff.
I'm not as much of a connoisseur anymore. I don't go and look for brands. I'm less of a consumer now than I've ever been. And I'm
Yeah,
10
me
years
too.
into this industry. When I do go out and buy now, I'm like, I can go and find Green Dot in a lot of places. I'm not worried about finding Green Dot anymore. Whereas 3 years ago, you wanted to go and find Green Dot when it was being released anywhere. The same thing happened with Bloom County. If I could go and find Bloom County anywhere, I would go and look for them in particular. That's the kind of thing, the brand awareness. And I think that, to your point, is that you actually selling out is a benefit for your company, and it allows more urgency for people to buy, and then they're looking out for it. And if you're growing something really high quality, and the main thing I look for now in flower is, I'm like, what is the freshest thing that you have? Because we're in Colorado. If it's not fresh, it's probably dry and crusty.
Yeah,
And
it crumbles to dust right in your
yeah,
hand.
yeah. And I'm like, and they're
It's so
boys.
dry here.
And I don't buy high quantities anymore because I'm like, if I'm not going through an ounce in a week or a few days, if I'm waiting a whole month to go through something, then it's not going to be the same quality by the
Yeah,
end
it's
as it was
true.
at the beginning. So those are always things, at least as a consumer, I ask myself. And it's questions I think more brands are asking themselves as well. And I think some of these newer brands are figuring out who their consumer is and really catering to them.
I love it. And wrapping up, if you can make every cannabis operator look at 3 things, what would it be? What could they work on or look at to see what they're doing or not doing?
Yeah, I think if I look at three things, one, I would encourage all of them to be looking at their data points. And in doing that, understanding who their ideal customers actually are. I think so many people in the space, again, they're looking at it as how many people I want to capture everyone instead of being like, I want to capture the right people. The second one would be the thing I want them to look at is then understanding really how they can use the tools that are provided for them to actually optimize themselves and create efficiencies where maybe they didn't see it before. How can I save money? How can I build out a business that is sustainable and strong? And Another one would be, from my chamber point of view, is what am I doing for the local community of cannabis operators? Again, we're outside of these big MSOs. Like, you're in Colorado, outside of Vireo, you have a lot more in common with every other operator than you do with Vireo. You should be working together to be building a strong local community of cannabis entrepreneurs, because we work in a small space. Like, this is a small space comparatively to almost every other industry that exists right now. And there's so much we can learn from one another. And I think so many people, they gatekeep their own knowledge because they think it's a secret sauce that maybe they're missing out, that if they give it to someone else, they're giving them the secret sauce. And really, you're not. It really takes someone executing that secret sauce at the end of the day. And there's room enough for all of us. And at the end of the day, it's just really important to build up that community and make sure that we are working together to build a really sustainable industry. Like, we've got enough working against us. We shouldn't be working against each other in the same realm.
Agreed. And too, I think the Colorado cannabis industry has produced an enormous amount of incredible entrepreneurs over the last decade or longer, including employees. I can't even tell you how many people I've met that originally started working in these cannabis operations in Colorado and eventually bought their own license or their own dispensary or their own grow or started an ancillary company. I think being part of the local community, the Colorado community, or whatever state that you're in, it is an opportunity to support small businesses, people who are trying to step out and become entrepreneurs or existing entrepreneurs in the industry. And entrepreneurship, it is very challenging. It's a lot of ups and downs. Owning a cannabis business, I think it's probably got to be one of the hardest things that anyone could ever do in their life. I've only run and operated. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done as far as any job or career I've ever had. And now owning my own business is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And there's so many ups and downs. And I just feel like that's just life, ups and downs. And then add owning a business as that layer on top of it, and add the fact that you're in the cannabis industry as another layer on top of it. I really appreciate everything that you shared. And then if you could just really briefly, especially if we have people from Colorado listening, I know we get people from all across the country, but just share about the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce is the fastest growing trade organization in the world right now for cannabis, with the exception of Antarctica. We're in every continent, and we have chapters all across the world and definitely all across the US. Here in Colorado, we are running events every month. We're trying to bring the community here together, where we're holding happy hours every single month, putting on events with other organizations. Our two most recent events, we've got one happening next week with the MJ Bowl, and that's with the Buddhist and MJ Biz and you and Social Cannabis. And we're going to be hosting that at Stoney's Bar and Grill. And then we're hosting another one in concert with Ignited and working with them to actually host a really great pre-party for the Ignited event here in Denver on the 17th of September, where we're really excited to be able to provide open bar, everything in there. And we're always looking for memberships and making sure that people are really out there supporting the community, because the more we're able to get the community involved, the more we're able to really get everyone together and work towards common goals, right?
Yeah. I love it. And I'll put the link in the description. And that way, for anyone's listening, you can go visit the website and go to their events page and try to see if there is a chapter in the state that you operate in, and go to the events. And memberships, it's really affordable. I just do the one that's $20 a month. And there's just nothing out there like that where you can join for $20 a month, really anywhere in the cannabis industry. Everybody wants $100 a month or more. There is that entrance level for small businesses, which is really nice that they have that.
Yeah. And really what we're just trying to do is support the small businesses in this industry. And if there's big things that pop up on the ballot, like there was the hemp beverage bill here in Colorado.
Yeah.
We built a whole event around that, highlighting one of those hemp beverage producers here in Colorado. and really just working to make sure that people understand what's happening in the community and providing information and, again, a community that people can grasp onto.
Yeah, like if they're doing one in California, I think it's today, the bud tender event. I think it's cool, all the different things they do, and there's online networking. I know I'm plugging it a lot, but I really enjoy it. It's a great way to connect with people in my state and my city. And look, national events are great, but they're kind of dying, let's be honest. And there's not many around like there used to be. And regional and local events are key, especially if you're a small business operator.
Mm-hmm.
They're key to getting out there and networking and building your funnels and building relationships. No matter how much AI comes into our world and computers, nothing's going to ever replace relationship building. At the end of the day, you have to get in front of people and connect, and you have to build relationships.
Absolutely.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's the foundation of any good business.
Face to face isn't going away anytime soon. It's
Yes.
so funny. I was thinking about it where Salesforce has cut down on their engineering staff because AI can take care of some of that. But the one
Yeah.
thing that they're still hiring for are salespeople, right? And that face to face interaction and relationship building is going to be more important now than ever, too. Just like you said, with AI and computers taking more of a forefront into the tedious work that people do, now it becomes a lot more about relationship building and meeting and connecting with other people.
Yeah. I'll have all of Tyler's information in the description box. And for those who like to stream audio, it is available on Apple and Spotify or wherever you like to listen. And for those who enjoyed video podcasts, it is available on my YouTube channel, which is at Under the Microscope with Jenny. So please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Thanks again, Tyler. I really appreciate you being here. It was great having you on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks to all of our listeners, and I'll see you on the next episode.